Before time itself ticked its first second, before the stars sparkled in the sky or oceans kissed the land, there was only emptiness, silent, still, and dark. But then, a voice thundered through the void. "Let there be light." And just like that, everything began. Light pierced the darkness. The sky stretched out, waters parted, life bloomed. In the beginning, the story of creation takes you back to that awe-inspiring moment when the universe was born not by accident, but by divine design. From the separation of light and dark to the shaping of humanity, witness the unfolding of the greatest origin story ever told. This is not just the story of how the world began, it's the story of why it matters. In the beginning, the story of creation. Long, long ago, before there were stars twinkling in the night sky, before birds sang in the morning, before the ocean waves crashed on sandy shores, before anything existed at all, there was God. And God had a wonderful plan. The earth was empty and dark. There was nothing but a vast, endless darkness and deep waters that stretched on forever. It was quiet. It was still. But God's Spirit moved gently over the waters like a soft breeze on a calm lake, preparing to create something absolutely magnificent. God looked at the darkness and spoke. When God speaks, amazing things happen. His voice is powerful, more powerful than thunder, yet gentle like a whisper. "Let there be light," God said. And instantly, whoosh, brilliant, beautiful light burst forth. It wasn't just any light. It was pure, glowing, perfect light that pushed away all the darkness. The light danced and shimmered, filling everything with warmth and brightness. God looked at the light and smiled. "This is good," he said. The light was exactly what he wanted. Then God did something wonderful. He separated the light from the darkness, giving each its own special place and purpose. He called the light day, and the darkness night. As the light faded and darkness returned, then light came again. The very first morning and evening passed. That was day one of creation. On the second day, God looked at all the water and said, "Let there be a space between the waters, a great expanse that separates them." And suddenly there it was. God created the sky, that beautiful blue dome that stretches overhead. He separated the waters, putting some high above in the clouds and some below on the earth. Can you imagine? God was building the very heavens. He was creating the space where birds would one day soar, where clouds would float by, where the sun and moon would shine. The sky stretched out in every direction, east, west, north, and south, beautiful and endless. God called this expanse heaven, or sky. He looked at what he had made and knew it was exactly right. Evening came, then morning, that was day two. On the third day, God had two wonderful surprises planned. First, God said, "Let the waters under the sky come together in one place, and let dry ground appear." The waters began to move, flowing and rushing together, forming great oceans, seas, lakes, and rivers. And as the waters gathered, something emerged: dry land. Mountains rose up tall and majestic. Hills rolled gently across the landscape. Valleys formed between them. Sandy beaches appeared where the land met the sea. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters seas. God looked at the land and seas and said, "This is good." But God wasn't finished yet. The land was still bare and brown, and God had something special in mind. "Let the land produce plants," God commanded. "Plants with seeds and trees with fruit that have seeds inside them." And immediately the earth came alive. Tiny green shoots pushed up through the soil. Grass sprouted, covering the ground like a soft green carpet. Flowers bloomed in every color you can imagine: red roses, yellow sunflowers, purple violets, and thousands more. Trees began to grow tall, strong, and beautiful. Apple trees with crisp, sweet fruit. Orange trees with bright, juicy oranges. fig trees, olive trees, palm trees swaying in the breeze. Berry bushes appeared loaded with plump, delicious berries. Vegetable plants sprouted 2 tomatoes, carrots, lettuce, corn, and every good thing to eat. Each plant had seeds inside it or on it, so it could make more plants just like itself. That was God's clever plan. Each plant could grow new plants from its seeds, so the earth would always be full of growing, living things. God looked at the land covered with plants and trees, all green and growing and beautiful, and he said, "This is very good." Evening came, then morning day. 3 was complete. On the 4th day, God looked up at the sky and said, "Let there be lights in the heavens. They will separate day from night, mark the seasons, and give light to the earth." God created 2 great lights. The greater light, the sun, blazed with brilliant fire and warmth. God placed it in the sky to rule the day. When the sun rises in the morning, it floods the world with golden light and warmth, waking up the flowers, warming the earth, and helping all the plants grow. The lesser light, the moon, glowed with a softer, gentler light. God placed it in the sky to rule the night. Sometimes the moon is big and round and full. Other times it's just a thin sliver, like a smile in the dark sky. The moon reflects the sun's light, creating a beautiful glow that lights up the night. But God didn't stop there. He flung the stars across the heavens, millions and billions of them. Some stars twinkle brightly, some glow softly, and some are clustered together in beautiful patterns we call constellations. The stars sparkle like diamonds scattered across a dark velvet cloth. God arranged these lights to mark time, days and nights, weeks and months, seasons and years. Farmers would know when to plant their seeds. People would know when summer's warmth was coming or when autumn's harvest was near. The lights would guide travelers and sailors, helping them find their way home. God looked at the sun, moon, and stars shining in the heavens, and he said, "This is good." Evening came, then morning. That was day 4. On the 5th day, God looked at the seas and the sky, both so beautiful, but still so quiet and empty. It was time to fill them with life. God said, "Let the waters swarm with living creatures and let birds fly across the sky." Suddenly, the seas came alive. Great whales appeared, the largest creatures ever made, singing their deep songs as they swam through the ocean. Dolphins leaped and played in the waves. Fish of every size, shape, and color darted through the water-striped fish, spotted fish, fish that glowed in the dark depths, tiny fish that traveled in shimmering schools, and big fish with flowing fins. Octopuses crept along the ocean floor with their 8 waving arms. Starfish clung to rocks. Crabs scuttled sideways across the sand. Jellyfish drifted gracefully through the water like underwater parachutes. Sea turtles paddled through the waves. Eels hid in coral reefs. Every kind of sea creature you can imagine suddenly filled the waters. And in the sky above, birds took flight. Eagles soared high on mighty wings. Hummingbirds hovered near flowers, their wings beating so fast they hummed. Parrots squawked in bright colors of red, blue, and yellow. Sparrows chirped cheerful songs. Owls blinked their big eyes, ready to hunt at night. Penguins waddled on ice. Flamingos stood on one leg in shallow waters. There were birds that sang beautiful melodies, birds that could mimic sounds, birds with long tail feathers, birds with short stubby wings, birds that dove for fish, and birds that soared on wind currents high above the earth. The sky filled with the sound of chirping, singing, calling, and whistling. God looked at all the sea creatures swimming in the waters and all the birds flying in the sky, and he was delighted. He blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply. Let the fish fill the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth." It was a command and a gift. These creatures would have babies, and those babies would have babies, and the earth would be filled with life. Evening came, then morning. Day 5 was complete. The 6th day was the most special day of all. God said, "Let the land produce living creatures, livestock, creatures that crawl, and wild animals." And it happened. The earth was suddenly filled with every kind of animal you can imagine. Lions roamed with magnificent manes. Elephants trumpeted with their long trunks. Giraffes stretched their long necks to eat from tall trees. Zebras galloped with their black and white stripes flashing. Bears lumbered through forests. Monkeys swung from tree to tree, chattering and playing. Tiny field mice scurried through the grass. Rabbits hopped with their cotton ball tails bouncing. Squirrels gathered nuts for winter. Deer leaped gracefully through meadows. Horses ran free with flowing manes. Sheep grazed on hillsides. Cattle mooed in green pastures. Snakes slithered through the undergrowth. Lizards sunned themselves on warm rocks. Frogs hopped near ponds, croaking their evening songs. Butterflies fluttered from flower to flower on colorful wings. Ants marched in lines, working together. Bees buzzed from blossom to blossom, making honey. Every animal was perfectly designed, some with fur to keep them warm, some with scales for protection, some with spots or stripes for camouflage, some with sharp claws for hunting, some with hooves for running. Each was unique and wonderful. God looked at all the animals he had made, and he said, "This is good." But God's work wasn't finished. He had saved the best for last. Then God said something very special. He said, "Let us make human beings in our image, in our likeness." This was different from everything else God had created. The sun and moon were magnificent, but they weren't made in God's image. The animals were wonderful, but they weren't made in God's likeness. Human beings would be special. They would be like God in important ways. They would be able to think, create, love, make choices, and have a relationship with God himself. So God formed the first man from the dust of the ground. He shaped him carefully and lovingly, like an artist creating a masterpiece. Then God bent down close and breathed into the man's nostrils the breath of life, and the man became alive. His chest rose and fell with breath. His heart began to beat. His eyes opened for the very first time. His name was Adam, which means man, or from the earth. Can you imagine? Adam opened his eyes, and the very first thing he saw was God's face. He was surrounded by the beautiful garden filled with trees and flowers and animals. Everything was perfect, fresh, and new. But God knew that Adam needed a companion, a helper, someone to share life with. So God caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep. While Adam slept, God took one of his ribs and closed up the place with flesh. From that rib, God created the first woman. Her name was Eve, which means life or living one. When Adam woke up and saw Eve, he was overjoyed. "Finally," he said, "this is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." He had found his partner, his companion, his equal. God blessed both Adam and Eve. He said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and take care of it. Rule over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and every living creature that moves on the ground. I give you every plant and every tree with fruit that has seeds in it. They will be food for you." God was giving them an important job to take care of his creation, to be good stewards of the earth, to name the animals, tend the garden, and fill the world with life and love. God looked at everything he had made, the light and darkness, the sky and seas, the land and plants, the sun and moon and stars, the fish and birds, the animals, and the humans made in his very own image. And God said, "This is very good." Everything was absolutely perfect. There was no sadness, no pain, no death. The lion lay down peacefully with the lamb. Adam and Eve walked with God in the cool of the day. They had everything they needed. They had purpose, beauty, love, and fellowship with their Creator. Evening came, then morning, day 6 was complete. On the 7th day, God's creative work was finished. The earth was complete, full of life, beauty, and wonder. So God rested. Not because he was tired, God never gets tired. But he rested to show that rest is important, that we should take time to stop our work and enjoy what we've accomplished, to reflect and appreciate the good things around us. God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. He set it apart as special, as different from the other days. It was a day to rest, to remember, and to celebrate all the good things God had made. And there it was, the whole world, created in 6 days, resting on the seventh. A world that was perfect, beautiful, and filled with the fingerprints of a creative, loving God. Try to imagine it. A perfect world where everything worked exactly as it should. Where every color was vibrant, every sound was music, every breeze was refreshing. Where animals lived in harmony, where humans walked and talked with God, where there was no fear, no conflict, no tears. The garden God planted was called Eden, and it was paradise. A river flowed through it, watering the land. Trees of every kind grew there, trees that were beautiful to look at and delicious to eat from. In the middle of the garden stood 2 special trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Adam and Eve could eat from any tree in the garden except one, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God gave them this one rule, this one boundary, not to restrict them, but to protect them and to give them the dignity of choice. Real love requires freedom to choose. Every morning, Adam and Eve woke to the songs of birds. They tasted fruit so sweet and perfect, nothing today compares to it. They explored the garden, discovering new flowers, new animals, new wonders every day. They worked, but it wasn't hard, exhausting work. It was joyful, fulfilling, creative work. They tended the garden, named the animals, and enjoyed the world God had given them. And in the cool of the evening, God would come and walk with them. Can you imagine? Having a conversation with God himself, walking side by side, asking questions, laughing together, sharing the day's adventures. That's how close their relationship was. This is how everything began. This is the story of where we came from, of how the world was made, of God's creative power and loving heart. The Bible tells us that God made everything from the smallest atom to the largest galaxy, and he made it all good. He made it with purpose. He made it with love. And he made human beings in his very own image, giving us the amazing ability to think, create, choose, and love. When you look at a sunset painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, remember God is the original artist. When you hear waves crashing on the shore or wind rustling through trees, remember God is the composer of nature's symphony. When you see a newborn baby or a blooming flower, remember God is the giver of life. The story of creation reminds us that we're not accidents or random occurrences. We're not just highly evolved animals. We're made in the image of God, created with purpose, designed for relationship with our Creator. It reminds us that this world with all its beauty is a gift. The mountains and oceans, the forests and deserts, the animals and plants, these are all treasures we're called to protect and care for. And it reminds us that God is creative, powerful, loving, and good. Everything he makes is good. Every design has purpose. Every creature has value. This creation story is just the beginning, the first chapter of the greatest story ever told. It's the story of God's love for the world he made and especially for the people he created. The story would continue with challenges and choices, with sadness and hope, with promises and fulfillment. But it all started here, in the beginning, when God spoke and created a world that was perfect in every way. So the next time you watch the sunrise, or pet a dog, or bite into a juicy apple, or gaze up at the stars on a clear night, remember this story. Remember that God made it all, and he made it for us to enjoy, to explore, and to take care of. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and everything he made was very, very good.